Along with Toy Story 5 and Moana 2, another successful franchise that's getting a sequel is The Incredibles.
Whoa! I like Mom's new job!
But do you know what's going to happen in the third movie of this amazing saga?
He's an excellent help.
The first thing we found out when the movie was announced was its logo. It follows the same pattern as the previous two films, but this time with 3 eyes instead of just 1 or 2. I love when movies get creative with their titles instead of just slapping a number next to the original name. In fact, many fans have started to speculate that the 3 eyes in the logo could represent the 3 kids of Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, since it's likely that they'll play a huge role in the movie. I just wonder what Disney will do if they end up releasing a 4th movie. Are they gonna add 4 eyes? Or maybe arrange the eyes to look like a 4? Maybe we'll only know once they announce another sequel. For now, let's focus on what Disney has told us about The Incredibles 3 and what we think might happen in the Parr family's new adventure. So hop on board, because you're about to dive into another Cinewave. One thing we're certain of is that the world's most powerful family will return for the 3rd movie: Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, Dash, Violet, and Jack-Jack. In other words, the villains are doomed. Other familiar faces confirmed to return are Edna Mode and Frozone, without a doubt the 2 funniest characters in this universe. We haven't gotten confirmation on other characters yet, but it's safe to assume that the superheroes from the 2nd movie might return, as well as Violet's crush, maybe even Jack-Jack's babysitter. Or maybe not, since their memories were erased. Since superheroes are making a comeback, as seen in The Incredibles 2, it's possible we'll see a whole bunch of new masked vigilantes. Just thinking about all the possibilities for characters with incredible powers gets me excited. But honestly, I doubt any of them could take on Jack-Jack. If you want The Incredibles 3 to come out sooner, drop a comment below with #JackJack. Now, if there's one thing everyone's curious about, it's what the storyline of The Incredibles 3 will be like. No official details about the plot have been revealed yet, but I bet they're cooking up something really exciting for the fans. So why don't we take a guess at the direction the movie might take? One of the coolest aspects of the first movie is its creative plot about superheroes living in a world where they can't use their powers to save others. This theme was explored even more in the 2nd film, with superheroes starting to make a comeback. It's highly likely that the 3rd film will expand on this even further, showing the world getting used to superheroes again. Of course, for this to happen, it's likely that some time will have passed between the 2nd or 3rd movies. While the 2nd film picked up right where the 1st left off, the 3rd could take place a few years later. If that's the case, the family dynamic would shift a bit. After all, Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl's kids would have grown up. Violet might be heading to college, while Dash would be in the middle of his teenage years. Jack-Jack wouldn't be a baby anymore, but a clever and ridiculously powerful little kid. This character evolution would be very welcome, especially since every Incredibles fan has wondered what the kids would be like when they're older. Since the first movie focused on Mr. Incredible and the 2nd on Elastigirl, a 3rd movie with a greater focus on Violet, Dash, and Jack-Jack would make perfect sense and wrap up the trilogy beautifully. If the 3rd movie does take place a few years after The Incredibles 2, the family would already be used to living a crime-fighting life. Violet would probably be the leader among the kids, being the oldest and most responsible. Dash would still be laid back, but much better at teamwork than he was in the 2nd movie. Jack-Jack, now coming into his own, might have a calmer personality than when he was a baby, but still joyful. He'd be a nice mix of his older siblings. Since Jack-Jack is so young and has so many powers, it's likely that he'd become one of the most famous superheroes of all. What could bring conflict to the story is that he's never stopped discovering new powers since he was a baby. As hinted in the 2nd film, for some reason, the youngest Parr seems to have an almost endless number of abilities. While having hundreds of different powers might seem cool, Jack-Jack would likely feel a bit scared of himself for not knowing his own limits. In this situation, he might even start wishing he could be a normal person, feeling different from everyone else. This could be shown in a scene where the heroes are fighting a villain or a group of villains, and Jack-Jack suddenly starts manifesting several completely new, uncontrollable powers. His family would try to help him, but they'd all end up getting tossed around by him. This incident wouldn't just help the bad guys escape, but might also put some civilians in danger. As a result, many people would start fearing Jack-Jack. After this incident, the youngest Parr would feel extremely guilty and run away to isolate himself, believing he's a threat. He'd then meet some kind of scientist who promises to take away his powers and make him normal. Out of desperation, Jack-Jack would agree to this sketchy proposal and undergo some kind of experiment. However, this scientist wouldn't have good intentions. He'd actually be the movie's main villain, a man with an insatiable hunger for power. Envious of superheroes, he would have spent years studying superhumans in hopes of creating a formula to give himself powers. His goal with Jack-Jack would be to obtain the kid's mutant DNA, which allows him to manifest all these different powers so that the scientist could turn himself into the most powerful superhuman of all. Meanwhile, the other siblings would be dealing with their own internal struggles while still fighting crime. This time, though, their problems might be the opposite of the previous films. Violet's civilian life could be so unbalanced that she'd try focusing 100% on being a superhero. At the same time, Dash would be making new friends in high school and struggling to protect his secret identity in a classic Spider-Man style. He might even start dating, only to get frustrated because he constantly has to leave dates early to fight villains. This would definitely cause problems for the group as they wouldn't be in sync. Several arguments would likely happen until they finally come together once they realize their younger brother is in danger. Eventually, they'd go on a mission to rescue Jack-Jack and defeat the scientist. However, it would be really interesting if the scientist managed to steal Jack-Jack's powers and turn himself into some sort of god with unimaginable abilities. The heroes would start to believe all hope is lost, but in the end, they'd figure out a way to undo what was done, take the powers back from the villain, and restore them to Jack-Jack. By the end of the movie, the youngest Parr would learn to control all his powers and fully accept himself. With that, the third film could wrap up with each member of the Parr family getting their moment to shine. And if a fourth movie ever happens, it could focus equally on the whole family fighting a common enemy. So what do you think? Would you like to see something like this happen in The Incredibles 3? Before the video continues, hit that subscribe button so you can keep getting our fan-made content. The cast for The Incredibles 3 hasn't been revealed yet, but since the second film brought back almost all the voices from the original, it's fair to assume that'll happen again. This means it's very likely we'll see Craig T. Nelson as Mr. Incredible again, Holly Hunter as Elastigirl, and Sarah Vowell as Violet. What's less certain is who will voice Dash. He had a different voice actor in each film, since he's a child and the original actor, Spencer Fox, was too old to voice him by the time the second film came out. It's possible that Huck Milner, who voiced Dash in the second movie, could return. That all depends on whether or not Dash will be aged up in The Incredibles 3. As for Jack-Jack, it's also tricky to guess. Eli Fucili might return to voice the youngest member of the family even if Jack-Jack ages, as he's voiced the character in both films and the shorts. But since the cast hasn't been confirmed, there's always a chance they could choose a new voice for Jack-Jack. What do you think? We can also probably expect to see Samuel L. Jackson back as Frozone. Can you believe that before he became Nick Fury in the Marvel movies, he was already playing a superhero in a Pixar film? Another key player we'll likely see return is the composer of the first two films, Michael Giacchino. Not only is he considered the go-to composer for the Incredibles franchise, but he also works regularly on Disney films. Some of his other works include Inside Out, Zootopia, the latest Spider-Man trilogy, and Lightyear, among many others. This guy stays busy. Now, one thing we know for sure is that director and screenwriter Brad Bird will be back. He's the creator of the franchise, which is a fantastic sign. I'm sure he has a lot of love for the Incredibles universe and wouldn't agree to make another sequel unless he was confident it would be great. If anyone can make an incredible Incredibles movie, it's him. Speaking of Brad Bird, his return as director pretty much guarantees who will voice Edna Mode. That's right, the same person who voiced Edna in the first two films, Brad Bird himself. That's right, not only does he write the script and direct the movie, but he's also the voice of Edna Mode. My mind was blown when I found that out, and I nearly passed out from laughing so hard. The movie hasn't been given an official release date yet, but we can try to guess roughly when it'll come out. To do that, we need to look at Disney's release schedule. Moana is coming out this November, Toy Story is slated for June 2025, and Zootopia 2 will be released in November that same year, with Frozen 3 arriving in November 2026. With all those films coming out in 2025, it seems likely that The Incredibles 3 will hit theaters sometime between 2026 and 2027. Of course, we can't say for sure. Let's just hope it doesn't take another 14 years like the second movie did. But in the meantime, I'm sure Disney will give us plenty of fun animated films to keep us entertained until then. The Incredibles 3 has all the potential to be the best movie of the saga and one of Pixar's greatest hits. To keep having fun, just click on one of the two videos we've left on the screen. I'm sure you'll love them. Thanks, and see you next time!